When Heinrich Himmler bit down on that cyanide capsule in May 1945, he escaped justice. But his family? They would spend the rest of their lives imprisoned by his name. The architect of evil falls. May 22, 1945, a British checkpoint near Bremervorde, northern Germany. Among a group of disheveled soldiers stood a man disguised as a sergeant of the Geheime Feldpolizei. His papers seemed legitimate, his demeanor unremarkable, but something didn't add up. Within hours, the truth emerged. This was Heinrich Himmler, the man who had orchestrated the systematic murder of millions, the architect of the concentration camp system, one of Hitler's most trusted lieutenants. He was immediately taken into custody at Lüneburg. The next day, during a routine medical examination, Himmler made his final decision. Before anyone could stop him, he crushed a hidden cyanide capsule between his teeth. Within minutes, he was dead. His body was buried in an unmarked grave on the Lüneburg Heath, its exact location kept secret to prevent it from becoming a shrine for Nazi sympathizers. But while Himmler's story ended in that examination room, another story was just beginning. One that would span decades and reveal uncomfortable truths about guilt, loyalty, and the impossibility of escaping history. A family on the run. Just one day before Himmler's capture, his wife Margarita and daughter Gudrun were fleeing through the Alps. They had left their Bavarian home in late April as Allied forces closed in, heading south toward Italy with desperate hope. On May 21st, near Bolzano, American troops stopped their vehicle. The two women were immediately taken into custody. Gudrun was only 16 years old. Within SS circles, she had been known affectionately as Boopie, Daddy's little girl. She had attended official events at her father's side, smiled for propaganda photographs, basked in the privileges of being Heinrich Himmler's daughter. Now, in a matter of days, her entire world had collapsed. For the Allied interrogators, she was simply the daughter of a monster. Behind barbed wire. The months that followed were a blur of interrogation rooms and internment camps. Margarita and Gudrun were transferred between facilities in Italy, France, and Germany. American and British intelligence officers questioned them relentlessly. Did Himmler leave behind hidden networks? Were there secret documents, bank accounts, escape routes for other Nazi leaders? This was the autumn of 1945. The Nuremberg trials were beginning. The world was learning the full scope of Nazi atrocities, and these two women sat at the center of it all, bearing a name that had become synonymous with unimaginable evil. Neither was charged with any crime, yet both were treated as witnesses to history's darkest chapter. Interrogation reports painted a picture of Margarita as loyal, reserved, and deeply bitter. She insisted she had known nothing of her husband's political work. She claimed she had lived a quiet life focused on their daughter and household affairs. She presented herself as an innocent wife caught in circumstances beyond her control. But was she? Letters from the 1930s tell a different story. They reveal a woman who supported her husband's ideology, who enjoyed the status and privileges his position provided, who was far more complicit than she later claimed. Gudrun, meanwhile, showed no such pretense. She was openly hostile to her interrogators. She defended her father with fierce loyalty, calling him a great man who had done nothing wrong. At 16, she remained unshaken in her devotion. When the trials concluded in late 1946, the Allies made their decision. Neither woman posed a security threat. Both were released in November and allowed to return to Germany. They walked out of internment into a country that despised them. Living under a cursed name. Post-war Germany was a landscape of ruins, physical, moral, and psychological. For the Himmlers, there was no home to return to. Their property in Gmund had been confiscated. Their bank accounts were frozen. Their social standing had evaporated overnight. Margarita and Gudrun settled quietly in the Munich area, surviving on small pensions and discreet support from former SS members who remembered their old commander. They kept their heads down, avoided attention, and tried to navigate a society that viewed them with suspicion and contempt. But the past refused to stay buried. In the early 1950s, Germany's denazification tribunals reopened Margarita's case. Initially classified as a Mitläuferin, a passive follower, new evidence came to light. Records showed her participation in Nazi welfare organizations. Correspondence revealed her ideological loyalty to Heinrich. Her wartime diaries, when discovered, were filled with admiration for Hitler and contempt for those who doubted the regime. In January 1953, the British occupation authorities reclassified her as Belastet, Category 2, an activist, a profiteer. The consequences were harsh. She was ordered to complete 30 days of special work duty. She lost her right to vote. Her pension was temporarily suspended. For Margarita, the humiliation was unbearable. She wrote bitter letters describing herself as a victim of Allied hatred. She insisted she had only ever been a wife and mother, but the evidence contradicted her claims at every turn. Gudrun faced her own struggles. Now in her early 20s, she had to build a life while carrying a name that made employment almost impossible. She worked as a dressmaker, then as a secretary, often using different surnames to avoid recognition. Those who discovered her identity never forgot. Yet she never wavered in her loyalty to her father. "I will never believe he did anything wrong," she told one interviewer. That loyalty would define her entire life. The secret networks. By the mid-1950s, something quietly sinister was taking shape in West Germany. Former SS members and their families were reconnecting. Private gatherings, shared memories, mutual support. These weren't just social clubs. They were networks of denial, preservation, and quiet defiance. In 1952, Gudrun attended her first such gathering. She found a community of people who shared her beliefs, who refused to accept the Allied version of history, who still saw nobility in what the world condemned as evil. In 1951, she married Wolf-Dieter Burwitz, an engineer and member of the far-right National Democratic Party. They settled near Munich and had 2 children. To neighbors and casual acquaintances, she was simply Gudrun Burwitz, a housewife living an ordinary life. But her activities told a different story. Working for German intelligence. Between 1961 and 1963, something remarkable happened. Gudrun Burwitz, Heinrich Himmler's daughter, was employed by the Bundesnachrichtendienst, West Germany's new intelligence agency. She worked as a secretary at the agency's headquarters in Pullach, using a different surname to obscure her identity. Decades later, when this employment was finally confirmed, it sparked outrage and uncomfortable questions. How could the daughter of Heinrich Himmler work for Germany's intelligence service? What did her hiring say about the penetration of Nazi networks into post-war German institutions? Was she simply seeking stable employment, or was something more sinister at play? The agency's official explanation was mundane. She was qualified, needed work, and the Cold War demanded pragmatism over purity. But scholars continue to debate what her employment really signified. After leaving the BND, Gudrun became increasingly active in revisionist circles. Silent help for the unrepentant. In 1951, a charity was officially founded in Germany, Stille Hilfe für Kriegsgefangene and Internierten, silent help for prisoners of war and interned persons. Its stated mission was humanitarian, to support Germans convicted by Allied tribunals, to provide legal aid, to help families of the imprisoned. Its real purpose was darker. Stille Hilfe became a haven for unrepentant Nazis, a fundraising vehicle for war criminals, and the network that helped fugitives escape justice. By the 1970s, Gudrun Burwitz became one of its most prominent figures. She attended reunions of former SS officers, she wrote letters to imprisoned war criminals offering support and solidarity, she raised money for their legal defenses and their families. She spoke rarely in public, but when rare photographs emerged, showing her gray-haired and smiling among elderly SS veterans, they became chilling symbols of post-war denial. Her message never changed. Her father was a great man who had done good things for Germany. Allied historians had distorted the truth. The atrocities attributed to the SS were exaggerated or fabricated. Stille Hilfe operated in legal gray zones, presenting itself as a humanitarian charity while channeling money to fugitives like Klaus Barbet, the Butcher of Lyon, and Anton Malith, who tortured prisoners at Theresienstadt. German authorities watched with quiet concern, yet for years no formal charges were brought. The other Himmlers. While Gudrun guarded her father's legacy with fierce determination, other branches of the family took dramatically different paths. Heinrich's eldest brother, Gebhard, was interned by Allied forces in 1945 and held until 1948. Classified as a follower rather than an active Nazi, he was eventually released. He settled in Munich, worked in industry, and later worked with a German cultural office cooperating with Afghanistan. He died quietly in 1982, rarely speaking about his infamous brother. Ernst Heinrich Himmler, the youngest brother, never saw the war's end. A journalist and radio executive who had joined the Nazi Party early, he served with the Volkssturm during Berlin's final defense. On May 2, 1945, just days before Germany's surrender, he was killed when Soviet troops overran the city. But the most striking departure came from a later generation, breaking the silence. Kathrin Himmler was born in 1967. If this story revealed something about the aftermath of the Nazi era, discover what happened to Hitler's most devoted followers after WW2, a look at how an entire generation tried to rebuild their lives after serving the Reich. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more History Inside. Thanks for watching.